Tim Boyd says that the threat he made to Brent Lambert, his rival for the county commission seat, by phone, it was 2 phone conversations initiated by Brent Lambert, were protected political speech, just part of the usual tit for tat in politics, not criminal, not a violation of TCA 39-14-112, which is the extortion statute. That statute says that extortion is when a threat is made that restricts unlawfully another's freedom of action or impairs or from the free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege secured under the Constitution in an effort to obtain something of value. So here we have a conversation where Brent Lambert calls in two phone calls Tim Boyd, the incumbent commissioner, the watchdog of the taxpayer watchdog on the county commission, and ask advice on what should he do. Well, I've got this information about your campaign loaning money to yourself, returning money, $5,000 in question from one account to the other, and that just looks bad. Tim Boyd effectively says, and Brent Lambert, with perhaps a bit of faux naivete, says, "Well, what do you think I should do?" And Tim Boyd is recorded as having said something to the effect that you should just not run. Look, I'll be here one more term, and then you can have a shot at this seat. And that sentence in the saying that you should resign this race, you should bail out of the race. That is the restriction in the statute of Brent Lambert's freedom of action. And so the leading member of the Fellowship of the Finger in the county, DA Neal Pinkston, obtains an indictment. He petitions the people in the grand jury, the people that would be like you and me, right? Men and women like you and me, and convinces them that this phone conversation about politics restricting Brent Lambert's liberty is in fact blackmail. It is blackmail for a candidate to refer to publicly available information made available by reporter Dick Cook at East Ridge News Online, publicly available information, and for him to say that I'll be mentioning that in my campaign, I'll be talking about this blight on your record in your campaign. That is blackmail. That is extortion. That is a threat to Brent Lambert's lawful and free freedom of action. And so there's been by Tim Boyd a motion to dismiss the whole thing in a criminal court. And the argument that Tim Boyd makes is effectively that you can't criminalize political speech. You can't make a crime what is simply two political figures in a quietly intoned conversation weighing their options. You can't take a proposal with a thing hanging over it. That is the word of Tim Boyd. You can't take that and make it a crime equal to, let's say, a robbery or a theft or a rape. And that's what the statute allows the leading member of the Fellowship of the Finger to do, Neal Pinkston, and that's what Neal Pinkston did, getting the people to agree with him. Because, of course, the grand jury hears only agents of the state. That is the main source of information that the people get. Now, just by the way, you, my listener, if you have personal knowledge of a crime, you may also speak to the grand jury. So if you know of a crime committed by, let's say, a state actor of some kind, an official, a police officer, a sheriff's deputy, an agent of some bureau or other, and the action is clearly outside the scope of his authority, he is potentially imposing upon you a crime, and that crime is called oppression. We have a very good oppression statute in Tennessee law, and you can get an indictment of that officer by affirming in a letter or query to the grand jury that you have personal knowledge of a crime. Okay, and then what you need to do is ask to be subpoenaed. Don't go before the grand jury yourself. Ask them to subpoena you, and therefore your appearance there is by its order. And then you give your testimony. Okay, so that way you can have a little bit of balance, a little bit of something better than the white bread diet that the grand jury gets from Neal Pinkston and his staff, who are constantly coming before the people, demanding that somebody be accused and indicted. It's an abusive process, sort of in general, and it's routinized. And I'm just guessing, but probably half the cases that end up in indictments shouldn't be even brought at all. And it's a very white bread diet, very unhealthy. You know, it causes the constipation of the body politic. so maybe if you want to offer a little bit of substance, a little bit of granular substance for the judicial digestive system, offer your own testimony, right? Your own evidence that there's been a crime. Only here, when you speak, the crime is not necessarily a private party against another private party. It could be a public party as against a private party, and a public party, a state actor, doing his will and committing a crime on a private person. Now, in the motion, Tim Boyd says effectively that my speech is protected. It's protected speech, and I have done nothing wrong. I've not committed a crime. Boyd is a political candidate, and he has the right guaranteed to him under two constitutions, the state and the federal, to express himself politically. This motion said he, like Lambert, has the right to speak directly, forcefully, and unsparingly about a political opponent, either in a mailing like Lambert chose to do, or directly to the man, as Boyd chose to do. Boyd's free speech protections are characterized in First Amendment jurisprudence as a fundamental liberty. And of that freedom, one may say that it is the matrix, the indispensable condition, this motion says, of nearly every other form of freedom. And that's Palco versus Connecticut from 1937. The First Amendment contemplates that the ultimate good desired is better reached by free trade in ideas, that the best truth, but that the best test of truth, it says, is the power of the thought to get itself accepted in the competition of the market. And that's from Abrams versus the United States citation. Then there's a citation from 1919, Holmes dissenting. The choices that government may make in an effort to regulate or prohibit speech are limited. And it goes on to say that an essential part of Boyd's freedom of speech is his right to bring focus, as it says, to issues and to examine and criticize the conduct of Lambert as a public official, the mayor of East Ridge, or candidate for county commission. Boyd has every right to publish or withhold the information he discovered on his political opponent, Lambert. So, too, does he have the right to discuss the consequences of the release of this information directly with Lambert. Now, this is information, again, that has already been published. Right? This isn't a secret video, okay? This isn't private papers that we have found in the dumpster, and we know that you're involved in something very, very bad, Mr. Lambert. We're going to reveal that. That's coercive. That's threatening. That's the Cosa Nostra mafiosi kind of threat, right? That's what you get in Chicago in the wards there. A discussion with Lambert concerning the facts that may surface in the election is fully protected political speech. Fully protected. Tim Boyd says political speech. There is no place for the state, this motion goes on to say, to burden Boyd with its view on the matter. This right of Boyd's, like that of any citizen, has been characterized as a political duty that should be a fundamental principle of the American government, citing Whitney versus California, 1927. Notice that many of these cases are quite old, and I cite quite a few old cases in my transportation administrative notice. They're old because they haven't changed, right? The jurisprudence past them or since them hasn't changed. Those are fundamental bedrock ideas. And think just for a second about the flyers that Brent Lambert sent in the mail. There is the flyers, because they're political campaign material, create a threat. And the threat on these flyers is this: if you elect this man who's had to go before the deputies for arrest after his indictment as a criminal on criminal charges, if you elect that man, your future is foreclosed. Right? That's the threat. There's a threat to the people at large in a campaign document. It's campaign document. Okay, it's political. It is a matter of personalities. It is a matter of which personality do you want to be the face of the law to you. Do you want Brent Lambert to be the face of the law, a younger man with young children at home, and a young family. Do you want this man to be the face of government for you, or do you want it to be Tim Boyd, who's 65, very experienced man, bulldog sort of watchdog for the taxpayer on the county commission? Which one do you want to be in that position? Tim Boyd is the object, of course, since he was indicted. He was indicted the very first day of early voting, and of course, Neal Pinkston made sure that happened very coincidentally. What it was, I'm sure. I'm not sure of anything, but I would suppose I would suppose that there's some calculation of it being useful to the voters, right? Let's get this out there now, so the voters will have something to chew on, and the voter can look at both of these men in light of this indictment, in the light of the operation of the extortion statute against Tim Boyd. But the flyers, just think of this flyer, they are sort of extortative too, and I'm not saying that they really are, right? I'm just saying that the statute's so badly written that it allows, it's so vaguely worded, that it allows what seems to me a vindictive prosecution against the county commissioner. On the other hand, and I say all that sort of because that's my instinct, my gut instinct. Having read with great care the book 3 Felonies a Day, how the feds use vague federal statutes to criminalize political figures and people who are involved in financial transactions who've done nothing wrong. They've done nothing wrong. They've hurt no one, and yet they're subject to criminal prosecution. My favor is always against prosecutors and always in favor of the defense, almost by definition. And that's because I defend the free market, and I defend the common law idea of liberty, right? The common law idea of freedom. Freedom and liberty are not the same. By the way, I'm just learning that in reading my late night book. It's called The Legal History of Capitalism. And there's a lengthy and very interesting discussion about how liberty is from the Roman sense. Freedom is maybe more in the Christian sense. Freedom is the free movement. Liberty is defined negatively as the absence of external constraints. So liberty is one thing. Freedom is something else. Freedom is the ability to pick up and go and to do your innocent and harmless will out in the marketplace. Liberty has in view the threats against that freedom, and so liberty is kind of a lesser concept. But this is a. So I'm just telling you why I tend to sort of instinctively favor the defense and instinctively disfavor prosecutions, partly because I've been witness to so many good men and good innocent people prosecuted as criminals for doing what? Exercising constitutionally guaranteed rights. So often the people who are the right ones, who legally are correct, that they're not under any kind of obligation to the good people in Washington. They're hounded, they're harassed, they're the object of liens, they're the object of civil action, they're the object of criminal action. And so when the moving party is the state, as a lover of God, okay, as a lover of the marketplace, and the lover of the free market and human ingenuity, human effort through entrepreneurship, I tend not to favor the prosecutor. Now today there is a parade downtown, the Armed Forces Day Parade. It is the 69th one. It will be honoring the Coast Guard. It starts at 10:30, just in about an hour or so, at ML King Boulevard and Market Street. It's heading north. Up through downtown to Aquarium Way. There'll be it is reported nearly 100 floats and bands and junior ROTC groups. There'll be veterans groups and no doubt other sort of hangers-on who want to be part of the procession. There's a great essay by R.J. Rush Jr. in one of his books. I think it's the Institutes of Biblical Law, Volume 2, in which he talks about procession. Processions are a Christian concept, and a procession comes from the idea, as he traces it out, from that the Holy Spirit proceeds from God the Father, right? So a procession is always has a spiritual basis, and A procession comes forth from and into the world. It emerges into the world with banners and claims and promises and authority and dignity, and that is what, of course, is evoked in every, whether it's a queer parade or a military parade, whether it's veterans returning from the war, or it is a celebration of some, St. Patrick's Day, some religious holiday. There is this proceeding is from the source, right, from a source to society at large. That's what processions are. They are a picture of deliverance. And in Christian theology, that is what the Holy Spirit does, of course, is deliver mankind from the slavery of sin over time. And that's the work of God through his Spirit. And there is this proceeding from God, this Holy Spirit, across mankind for the ultimate salvation of mankind. So there is the borrowing in the Armed Forces Day Parade today in Chattanooga downtown, this idea. Now, today is Cash Friday, and I don't want to let that escape notice, right? Cash Friday is where you, my listener, and I together, we go to our credit union. I'm a member of a credit union, a longtime member with my family, including my mother and dad were members of the same one. And we draw out a piece of green paper. Now, this paper is a very special paper. It has a security stripe down the right side. It has a notable American figure on the face, and there are 4 times on the front the number 100. And then that number is repeated on the back. And you draw that piece of paper out that has 100 written on it, and you go, as you need to, and spend it in local economy. Now, we do that because we are concerned about the tapeworm tax that the credit economy imposes on small business. We are the small business station. We're concerned about how young entrepreneurs and even old entrepreneurs have this tapeworm tax. It's a tax that fills you might say, the gut of the American economy, and it saps from the tract the digestive benefits that it should be getting, and it's siphoning it away. It is part of the national skimming economy that with which we have become very familiar. One that has brought us to the edge of crisis. Right, we are at the edge of a national crisis. Where the system will seize up and it will not work anymore, and there will be a sudden bit of doubt that will, like the hand, the cloud that was the size of the hand there when Elijah said, "Okay, well, it is going to rain now," and slowly it expands and fills the sky. That of course brought a benefit to thirsty Israel, but here we're thinking of a small cloud as big as a man's hand that becomes a raging storm and wrecks our debt-based, fiat money-based economy. On Cash Friday, we think about liquidity. We think about privacy, or privacy, as the English would call it, and we spend money without having the flagellum trail after it, like the spermatozoa flagellum trail, tracing after it to propel it along, right? In a cash transaction, there is the satisfaction of having made the payment. Now, not legally, but in practice, the transaction is completed with the payment. And there's not the credit card that has the paperwork, right? The bill at the end of the month and the record of all your little expenses. You're having mortgages on cheeseburgers and fill-ups on your car, and paying a repair bill on your credit card. There's this long record. So you have this simplicity of design of a cash payment in favor always of local economy, in favor of your local provider. And that's why I want you to think about paying in cash. Pay in cash and have your local business be thankful for that 2 or 3% that it is saving. When you're in a small shop, 2 or 3% matters a great deal. And so if you don't have to pay the stiff Amex fee, I think it's about 5%, or the more reasonable 2 or 3% from Visa, you are coming out ahead. And so you, my listener, I suggest, think in terms of not just satisfying yourself, buying something for yourself, and looking at these transactions purely from a self-centered perspective. Think of them in terms of a relationship, right? You're having a relationship with this restaurateur, a man you know, and if you pay him cash, you are doing him a favor. It's your convenience, of course, to pay by credit card, and he knows that, and he can certainly take your credit card payment. But if you pay in cash, then you're saving him, and you're really doing him a favor. So I want you, my listener, to think about doing a favor, extending a grace to your opposite party in this local economy transaction. This is David Tulis. We are arguing always for local economy and free markets here, brought to you by yournews.com, yournews.com, live on Facebook. Do like me. Do like our station on Facebook. It's Nooga Radio, and we're live on YouTube. And want to thank you for giving us just a minute of your time. I need just 5 minutes every day of your time. Just 5 minutes. The number is 800-8949. 800-8949. That's 800-8949. To get through to talk to some other listener out there. There's probably some other listeners out there, and they'd love to hear what you have to say. I can solve your problem, maybe. If you just tell me what your problem is, maybe we can work together to bring you closer to resolution here. David Tulis.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 7 FM's news now.
Judge Barry Steelman hammered the gavel on Joshua Mincy, who prosecutors say murdered Tammy Hall and stuffed her body in the trunk of a car. Mincy reportedly told the police he had been a member of the Vice Lords gang since he was just 12 years old. He'll spend 35 years in prison. Starting in July, it'll be illegal to talk on the phone while driving in Georgia unless you have a hands-free device. Eastridge citizens grilled the mayor and the head of the Eastridge Housing Authority, demanding answers about letters they received telling them their properties will be subject to redevelopment. The chairman told the crowd the overarching plan was to increase commercial development in the area. Many say they want the authority dissolved. Despite the demands, the mayor says he plans to move forward with the initiative. A public meeting will be held at an unspecified date to clarify policy, but they say a new plan will be drafted. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News Talk 92.7 Action News now.
Nooga Radio.
Roar into Talladega.
Hello? Who am I speaking with?
Eric.
You're our winner.
Really?
You'll receive tickets for all 3 races between the Camping World Truck Series, Xfinity Series, and the Monster Energy Cup races.
Holy cow.
In addition, you'll receive a 2-night stay at the Microtel Hotel and restaurant accommodations at 2 area restaurants.
Nooga Radio.
Roar into Talladega.
Nooga Radio.
92.7.
Your NASCAR racing station. Nooga Radio 92.7 FM.
Nooga Radio 92.7.
They're all under $10,000.
$10,000.
That's right. Powerful V8 Hemi cars under $10,000 at Southern Fleet Sales in East Ridge. But you got to get there now for the best selection. These are retired cop cars. And man, are they fast. You want to look really cool. You want a fast car for under 10 grand? Then get to Southern Fleet Sales in East Ridge. That's not just a V8. It's a V8 Hemi cop car. SouthernFleetSales.com. 3900 Ringgold Road, East Ridge.
Hey guys, do you need a mini man break? We know how busy you are, but don't let your hairstyle suffer. Come see the stylist at Sport Clips at Hamilton Place and let them treat you to the MVP experience. A precision haircut, legendary hot steam towel, massaging shampoo, and relaxing neck and shoulder treatment, all while watching your favorite sports. No appointment needed. Sport Clips at Hamilton Place, located in front of Home Depot.
I travel a lot for my job, not to mention just everyday life. But no matter where I go, I want to feel safe. A friend said, go to Shooter's Supply, so I did. I got the right firearm for me, 20% off firearm training, and 12 months same as cash financing. Big box stores can't do that. Shooter's Supply can. Go see for yourself and take a free tour of their indoor range. Just look for the A-frame on Hickson Pike in 153. Shooter's Supply. Buy there, shoot there.
Expect more dry and warm weather out there for your Friday. After some morning sunshine, a few afternoon clouds will roll in, highs lower to middle 80s. Tonight, quite mild, lows 62 to 65. For Saturday, cloudy with scattered showers and thunderstorms rolling in, highs upper 70s, a little drier later Sunday. Check out Glass Farm Nursery now with a big assortment of perennials, annuals, and tropicals to beautify your lawn and garden. Open daily, closed Sundays. Glass Farm Highway 11, 4 miles south of Trenton. And I'm S'mores Eating 12 after 4.
The smartest guy in Chattanooga, David Tulis.
David Tool is here. Better than far, small than big, and simple. Then footnote type in Helvetic, the neutral font. We read that person, then corporate, and physical. The name. But if you want to read deep state material, have it focus on Tennessee to your new, even perhaps your, and there I have done a bit of helpful analysis on topic that people don't think about, but one of the brought up that people will read last. Okay, this will be the essay that, because it just seems long and it just. But what I explain, we've lost our liberties. That well state, the one that gives us the many wars, right? We forces they prayed. How is it that this and gets away with it? How does it get away with these many abuses of law? Right, constitutional rights are done away with. We have a usurping and a presumptuous national authority and state authority, and always with the pretense of helping us, right? Making our life better, making sure that women with children have proper care for their children, have proper nutrition. So at every turn, there's a state program that's made. There's an institution that's created to give some kind of benefit for the laggards among us, for the poor among us, for the hurting, right? Those who don't have all the advantages. We have a program for that person. And we're going to launch forth with it, even though there's no real basis for it in the law. And you know, the good people want to have it both ways. They want to have a system. They reject the Bible. Okay, first of all, they reject the Bible. They reject the idea in the scriptures that the state or the king is simply a judicial system. That's really what civil government is supposed to be, just a court. That's it. There's no, if you look at old Israel, the Confederation of 12 Tribes, there was no central state. That there was a monarchy, and that the monarchy was given as a judgment against what they wanted. They wanted a monarchy, and then they got one. Samuel having warned against that step. But generally, there was no, even when the Israelites had a monarchy, there was no centralized executive state. There was a court, and there was no prison system. And there was no executive function from the king. The king did execute things, but they didn't have then what we have today, which is the modern executive state, which is very, very busy. And Montesquieu, the so-called conservatives, the French conservatives, proposed, well, we can have an expanded state, but let's see if we can make it attractive to people who are concerned about abuses. Let's make sure that we have divided powers, right? So our tripartite system of divided powers came from the conservatives, who were fighting for more government. They were fighting for a bigger civil magistrate, more extensive civil magistrate, and so they said, well, let's divide the top or the agencies into the judicial, the legislative, and the executive. You know, and that way we can have them all competing against each other. And they will limit themselves, limit one another, so no one will become too strong, and in competing interests, they will stay within the bounds of the law. Well, it didn't work out that way, and that system, while it has many Calvinistic theories behind it that are good, in practice was rejected because the people changed religion. Right, the American people changed their God over the course of 100 years or so. And now their God is their God is the state. In our day, we have not common law, we have positivist law, and you might think that's just a mouthful, and I've never really thought about that. But if you have a common law system, you don't have books and books of laws. You just don't. You have the principles of equity reigning, and protection of every person and every person's rights and property by the law. In other words, the court, which is the law, is there to enforce your rights. If you're abused, you sue. If you commit a crime, the officer who serves the court will bring you in, right? Or the people who represent the law will bring you in. And in our founding, the first 150 years or so, there were no police. If a crime was committed, the people brought the malefactor or the accused to the judge. There was no executive state, and there was very limited legislative action as well, because the law was already there, right? We already had a law. But if you want to say, okay, we're not going to have Goss laws anymore, we want to do better, we're going to not have common law anymore, we want to write everything down. So every law is written down. If you're going to have a system where everything is written down in multiple volumes of the Tennessee Code annotated, which is what we have today as the evidence of this great labor, and you have a positivist law system versus a common law system where there simply are negatives, right? The common law and the biblical law simply are negatives. And if there's not a negative that's being violated, the state has no power to do anything, right? In our day, since we're better than people of old, we have all these laws written down. Well, okay, if you have all these laws written down, the question now is your civil magistrate going to obey them? And that's where the rub is. The answer, or the observation to make, is that no, he's not. No, he's not going to observe the limits of the written law that he put there so that he could control you. All right, he put those written laws there to control you, and in a show of magnanimity, pretends that he's going to obey these laws too. Right? These laws bind him as well as you. Well, we know that they bind you left and right. You are like Gulliver on the island of Lilliput when he was washed ashore, half drowned, according to Jonathan Swift's wonderful story, and these little tiny people tie him down with hundreds of little strings. So he can't even sit up, and so he has to negotiate his release with the Lilliputian so he can sit up and stand up and take a leak. That's one of the pressures he was feeling as he woke up there that morning, imprisoned by these tiny people. We're bound down by all these rules. Well, the good people, as I call them, in Washington and Nashville and even locally, have these rules that are supposed to protect us, right? And to enumerate duties and to enumerate rights and to enumerate how the bureaucracy is supposed to work. They are roundly ignored, widely ignored. And so what we want to look at is all the time is what's in view in the following question: what is your authority? That is a question that I think we need to ask a lot more, and that requires, do it in writing, of course. Don't try to have a conversation on these points. Do it in writing. Have that person say, well, please send a letter to my attorney. Please send a letter here in care of my attorney. We'll look it over. But often what is demanded is simply not there. There's a lot of ex nihilo activity. That is to say, activity that comes from nowhere, right? It comes from nothing. Actions that are not based in law. It's a very, very common problem. So they're trying to have it two ways, these people. They don't want a common law system because they want to control you, right? Because under a biblical common law system, there's total liberty, right? Under the theocracy, you're as close as you could ever get to having an anarcho-libertarian reality. That's as close as you can get to that whimsical theory of the libertarians. That would be a theocracy where God's law reigns. That's a common law society. There's no written statute except what's in the Bible, right? It's total freedom. And you have the court to settle disputes and the judge to lead a war. If you need to have a defense of your country against an invader, well, the judge leads it. That's what the book of Judges shows, that was the principle in that time. And so the Old Testament has a lot of policy directives. Okay, if you read the Old Testament, it is a guide of policy that today people reject somehow. And so we have the alternative. We have totalitarian states. We have warfare, welfare states. We have total surveillance states and executive states. And then we have all of which operate under the UAPA, the Uniform Administrative Procedures Act. We have the procedural administrative state, the behemoth. Is probably best identified in those terms, the behemoth administrative state. So all that to say, among other things, that a bag of silver today is about $11,651. If you want to buy $1,000 in real money, it's going to cost you $11,651 in paper. That's the asking price today, according to the Money Changer market email. And an American Eagle gold coin, 99.9% pure, is $1,000. It's a $50 coin. So to buy $50 in gold, which is that's not a statutory coin, of course. It's just a marketing coin from the U.S. Mint. That's going to cost you 1,324 paper dollars. Well, how is it we have this distinction between paper dollars and dollars? Well, what's a dollar? And the reason we have this question is because we have our civil magistrates at the state level and the local level rejecting Article 1, Section 10 that requires every payment to be made, every record to be kept in lawful coin and currency. And this is long shot down. Though there was in the early 1980s the Great Money War that was launched here in Tennessee. It was launched in Swanee by the man who put out the Main Street Journal. And I'm holding up for you, my viewer, on Facebook at Nugget Radio, a copy of the September 1982 edition, and the cover story is about a seminar held up at the inn there in Monteagle. And the thing that I wanted to mention is this whole question about local economy. What is local economy all about? Why do I emphasize local economy? What on earth is it? Why would I think if I'm here, I'm a talk show host and I'm trying to be a populist, right? Well, how can you make populist? Where's the populism in the idea of local economy? I mean, it just sounds so boring. And yet, in my mind, the idea of local economy really contains essential reasons for action, essential reasons for even inaction. Because sometimes what you want to do is to not act, right? Rather than act, you want to not act. But much of what I think is vital to us in Chattanooga is the right kind of action, lococentric, Nooga-centric action. We are the multimedia platform here on 92.7 FM and 95.3 HD4 FM. That's high definition digital. We are the platform that argues for local solutions. Now, I think that some people who are conservatives talk about solutions and really don't offer any because their rhetoric, their analysis is entirely what's happening in Washington and internecine disputes among Republicans and investigations and special prosecutors and FBI directors and former FBI directors and the like. 800-8949, 800-8949, brought to you by yournews.com. David Tillis, brought to you by yournews.com. But the problem that we have when you have a positivist law system is that you have an operation of the entire federal hegemonic system, right? An entire system which controls pretendedly all of life. It really doesn't, but we're supposed to believe that it does, and so we act as if it does. It operates outside the law. I'm looking here at a letter from that Paul Hine sent me this morning or yesterday. I said, Dr. Hine, can you send me some of your correspondence with the revenue commissioner of the state of Missouri in asking a question? He's a writer. He used to run the Monetary Realist Society. I used to get that bulletin from Dr. Hine, and I have many copies of it. They're beautiful writing. And he says, I believe this is him in writing to the Director of Revenue in May 30, 2012. He says, the issue is whether or not someone living in Missouri can be compelled to state on a Missouri tax form under penalty of perjury the, quote, true, correct, and complete, unquote, value of his, quote, income, unquote, which is not defined in state or federal law in terms of dollars, which are not defined in state or federal law. In addition, an additional issue is whether or not a person living in Missouri can be, as he says, compelled to obey a law, which is or seems to be secret. Information regarding these issues is enclosed in this request. And he's asking, how can I obey a law under penalty of perjury, signing the jurat, right? The little thing that says under penalty of perjury. How can I fill out a form and answer questions when nothing's defined? And here we have a great problem. What is a taxpayer and what is a non-taxpayer? There's a distinction to be made, and it comes from Economy, Plumbing, and Heating case 1972. And it says the revenue laws are a code or system in regulation of tax assessment and collection. They relate to taxpayers and not to non-taxpayers. The latter are without their scope. Okay, so a tax law does not have in its scope a person who's a non-taxpayer. No procedure is prescribed for non-taxpayers, and no attempt is made to annul any of their rights and remedies in due course of law. With them, that is to say, non-taxpayers, Congress does not assume to deal, and they are neither of the subject nor of the object of the revenue law. So that's economy, plumbing and heating, 470F 2D 585. That's 1972. So you have the court saying, well, we understand that there are two categories of people: non-taxpayers and taxpayers, and the revenue laws apply to whom? 800-8949, 800-8949. They apply to taxpayers. Now, I say this in the context of this larger discussion about local economy as an idea, because part of my work as someone who likes to read law, my bathroom reading often is Gibson's Suits and Chancery. I've gotten pretty far in one of those two volumes in bathroom reading, doing that. I like reading law. I'm fascinated by law because I'm a kind of a rebel. I'm kind of an antinomian at heart, right? I'm a sinner, so I'm trying to fortify myself and steep myself in what the requirements that exist. How am I to love God by obeying Him, right? That in my personal life, and how in our society, how in our city, Chattanooga, Hamilton County, how can our city love God by obeying Him, right? And where do we obey God? Where do we obey the Constitution? Where do our betters obey the Constitution? How do they do that? And how, working together within the law of God and within the scope of actual statute, how can we have a better life here? Now, maybe you have an idea about that. And the number is 800-8949. That's 800-8949. And you can call me, and we'll be glad to chat with you about your situation. Dr. Hines says, I have on at least two occasions provided the Department of Revenue with signed affidavits indicating that I was not a taxpayer. They have provided me with nothing save demands, except for the laughable assertion that Section 61 imposed the tax. The burden of proof may lie with the taxpayer as regards the amount of the tax, but the burden is upon the DOR to prove that a target is indeed, he says, a taxpayer. And then he quotes Tandy Leather Company versus the United States. He says that the burden in such a case is always on the collector to show, in justification of his levy and collection of an excise tax, that the statute plainly and clearly lays the tax, that in short, the fundamental rule is that taxes to be collected must be clearly laid. In other words, to lay a tax, you have to identify the subject of it. And I talk about these kinds of things because I want people to understand that there's a lot more liberty than they realize. And if we assert our liberty and see how, in many ways, the law is really more liberal than they pretend, the good people, and that we understand it to be, then we're going to have more prosperity, more dollars, and will become a more attractive place for people elsewhere, say in high-tax states such as Connecticut or California, to move. We want more people in Chattanooga. We want people to come here because God's been very gracious to this city. It kills many fewer babies than, say, Memphis and Nashville per capita. And there's more hope, less despair here. And though grievous wrongs have not been remedied and grievous sins have not been repented of, still there is sense of progress. There's a gain, if you will, in the life of Chattanooga and the life of Hamilton County, and we can see that in several sectors. The entrepreneurial sector is small. It's very small here, but it's strong. What we have is strong and very forward thinking and very respectable. Right. There's also a strong educational sector, though it faces really an insurmountable obstacle through the property tax that favors and subsidizes the school cartel. If we could just somehow start chopping out the incomes of that cartel, we would have much more liberty and many more people coming here. What can we do, Jim Coffinger, to make this a freer city? What can we do, Sheriff Hammond, to make it a freer city, a more liberal city? And I mentioned about the liberality of laws. The laws that are Title 55 reform, that's the one I'm working on. David Toole is here, the drafter of transportation administrative notice given to City of Chattanooga, Mayor Burke and his attorney, Wade Hinton. They've been apprised of the limits of the law. Sheriff Hammond in Hamilton County as well. Other jurisdictions probably need to get handed a copy of this review of the statute. Title 55 is actually much more liberal than made out to be. By whom? By the cops. Cops, enforcers pretend that statute makes no distinction between travel and transportation, and yet it does. Just as that decision from the high court makes the distinction between taxpayers and non-taxpayers. Well, to be a taxpayer, you have to be made liable. Your activity, your taxable activity, has to be particularly mentioned as subject to the tax. Then you're liable, right? Then you're a taxpayer. And if you have resistance, it's not really on that category or status. Your resistance is perhaps on the point of whether the form was filled out correctly or whether the numbers you put in were correct. But even here, as Dr. Hine points out with his inquiry, you have undefined terms, and in a positivist law system, you can't have undefined terms, right? You just can't. In a biblical system, the terms are defined by justice, by God's law, right? You can't have unequal weights and measures. What is a dollar? Well, the state won't tell you what a dollar is. What is income? Well, that's not defined either. Many important terms are not defined in this system, and that's to allow the scam to operate against private people, against you. And who benefits? Well, it's always the people at the top of the heap, the people with big corporations, the people with government contracts, the people who have steady connections to and steady access to the spigot of free money, which is all credit extended today is just about free. Though there are some hints that the Fed may ease slightly its artificial control of the rate of interest, and stop this gigantic mountain of IOUs from being built any further. It's already about to topple. It's so high that it's very unstable, and so we have in this view here of local economy, we have the idea that I want to encourage you to share with me. We have local solutions. And we need to see what the laws actually say. And if a law is more liberal than it's enforced, that we need to make a big deal out of that. We need to enforce that limit. We need to say, Sheriff Hammond, please obey the law. Do something daring, Sheriff Hammond. Go against 80 years of enforcement practice and tradition and custom, and read the statute and see that it applies only to transportation. It does not apply to free travel. And you can bring this reform about today, even though the high court is part of the conspiracy, if you will, the combination against the rights of the people, especially the poor, and especially the black. Just as statutes today trying to impose discriminatory rules and two-faced rules on immigrants and others, we need to see how we can remedy wrongs against immigrants and against black people. And what will happen? Well, we'll all benefit from that. Just as we wanted to enslave immigrants, we wanted to enslave blacks, we all have been enslaved as a result. Now, if we work to free them, the ones who are enslaved with us and enslaved first, if we work in their interest, we Caucasians, let's just say, white, well-to-do Caucasians in nice cars and nice clothes, we will ultimately benefit. But I think we need to work on reform. David Toulis, that reform for me is in the context of local economy in the free market, lococentric solutions, and close examination on the actual authority to impose burdens, to bring burdens upon the free market here in Chattanooga and Hamilton County. David Toulis.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
Eastridge citizens grilled the mayor and the head of the Eastridge Housing Authority, demanding answers about letters they received telling them their properties will be subject to redevelopment. The chairman told the crowd the overarching plan was to increase commercial development in the area. Many say they want the authority dissolved. Despite the demands, the mayor says he plans to move forward with the initiative. A public meeting will be held at an unspecified date to clarify policy, but they say a new plan will be drafted. Judge Barry Steelman hammered the gavel on Joshua Mincy, who prosecutors say murdered Tammy Hall and stuffed her body in the trunk of a car. Mincy reportedly told the police he had been a member of the Vice Lords gang since he was just 12 years old. He'll spend 35 years in prison. Starting in July, it'll be illegal to talk on the phone while driving the hand traffic. Radio News.
Fix that more. A few afternoon clouds roll in, highs lower to cloudy with scattered showers and thunderstorms rolling in. Highs upper 70s, little drier. Let's check out Glass Farm Nursery now with a big assortment of perennial tropicals to beautify your lawn and garden. Open daily, closed Sunday. The front.
Bye. Here's a. It's May is motorcycles and Timmy share to promote Save Away starting at 10. There'll be vendors, activities, and plenty of cyclists in May, but every day. Save at Indian Motorcycle up.
Start ready, planning for the future. The way to keep our financial future local. He knows us and cares about what's important to us.